Well, good morning. I guess if y'all are all in here ready and studious, we'll get started, huh? And Mona and Karen are ready. Hi, everybody. All right. So we've been talking about the 10 Commandments, if y'all didn't know. This week, we're talking about Commandments 8 and 9. Do not steal and do not give a false testimony against your neighbor. That one's not literally on the page in front of me, so I don't remember exactly what it says, but we will. Okay. So if you guys have a comment on any of it, let me know. There's a singer's mic right here you guys can pass around, or you can come up to this mic. Zoomers, you can just voice in if you've got something to say. Please interrupt me. I get on a roll. I look down. I won't notice you, but I want to hear what you're saying. So just, hey, Jen, I have something to say. Wonderful. Please do that. Also, this week we are going to try and think up and try to find places where Jesus interacted with these commandments together. Partly because I was at the beach half the week and it was Coraline's birthday and I just didn't have time to hunt it down, and because it's fun and I figured you guys are smart and you can help me. Alrighty. So commandment number 8, do not steal. Again, I pulled my notes from this great book and a couple of commentaries, and here we go. So she says, the commandments so far have dealt with issues of divine authority, life and death, honoring family and sacred time, etc. And suddenly the gears are shifted from holy spirits and holy relationships to the issue of things. God considered the possession of things of sufficient importance to include respecting ownership as one of the big 10. Just as God gave humans life, body, spirit, he gave humans the earth and all that is on it. And as soon as a human being has legitimately acquired something by gift, inheritance, earning, purchase, trade, or personal creation, it becomes an intimate part of himself, much as his body is part of himself. In this commandment, God expects us to respect a person's property because of the human spirit who owns it. Stealing becomes an offense against the human spirit who owns the property, as well as against God because of the command not to steal. That's what she says. Do you agree with that? Does that sound right? Any thoughts so far? Will you hand him that mic and turn it on? I don't think it's on yet. I hit on this end, is it? Oh, okay, great, perfect.
All right. It's surprising that if you've ever been invaded, if you've had something stolen from your home, if you had something stolen out of your garage, out of your car, how violated you feel.
Yeah.
And it seems almost sinful to be that attached to objects, but you do feel violated, even if they don't take much. It's threatening.
Yeah, when I read the way she talked about, she said, suddenly the gears are shifted from holy spirits and holy relationships to the issue of things. I was like, oh, that does sound like less holy and less special. Pulling up Matthew really quick because I know there's some good stuff in there. Matthew, you were right there. Hey, buddy. Matthew 5, Sermon on the Mount. That's one of the things I've learned. Where's the Sermon on the Mount? One of the places, Matthew 5. It's in a couple of places, but it's in Matthew 5. Okay, salt and light, fulfillment of the law. Do you guys have your Bibles? You want to grab a Bible? We're looking together, guys. We're working on this. What does anybody think of anything directly offhand before we get started that Jesus says about owning things or taking care of things or being given what we have? Any of that stuff? Murder, adultery, divorce, oaths, eye for an eye, love for enemies. One of the things I thought about this, that I've thought about all of them, is that if we're using the metaphor of dance steps or specifications, any of that stuff, if we are in fact made to empty ourselves out, and that is one of the ways that we reflect God, bring his character to the world, allow his filling of us up, all of that, then stealing is literally the opposite of that. It's not giving of yourself, it's taking from someone else. So that seems pretty bad. Seems like we definitely shouldn't do that. I mean, the ones I'm thinking of now are just, don't worry about your things. God's going to take care of you. God's going to take care of you. I know that's in here someplace. Matthew 5:19. Thank you. Thank you. Let's see. Matthew 5:19. Therefore, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commandments, that one?
I'm sorry, I'm looking at 6.
Matthew 6, no problem. It's loading. Circle of death. Give me a second. If anybody has it, feel free to read. I could, I just didn't grab it if you want to. I could use, but does anybody have? I thought this was going to work, but it's just not cooperating with me. Unfortunately. There are advantages to the paper. Yes. Okay, well, that's not going to load apparently. Does anybody else, did anybody find it? What does it say?
Do not store it for yourselves treasure on earth, where moth and rust destroy, or where thieves break in and steal, but store it for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moth and rust do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart is also.
For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Zoomer, she just read the store up treasures in heaven, not here. Because where your treasure, heaven is treasure. Yes, that's a great one. Exactly. So be thinking of these. Yeah, sure. It's going to work better than this thing. No. Okay, thanks. Google, that's the way I usually do it. I say, wait, something about this. What does it say? Where do I find it? Okay. So there's some punishments just to prove how much God hates stealing. She talked about some of the punishments that God laid out for stealing. She said our law punishes the criminal for the crime against the state, but not really the individual. I think I'll be okay with that. Thank you. So nor does the victim of the crime get any restitution in any way. In the Old Testament would have the criminal, if busted red-handed, pay back double, so that what they tried to take is taken from them. They would have the criminal, if they turn themselves in, not having to be busted, they would have to pay back and then only 20% more, not that again. It says with his confession, he saved the community and the victim a legal battle and cleared up the matter in a way that everyone feels settled and not aimlessly distrustful of their neighbor and stranger. Additionally, the admission of guilt may be the first step of genuine repentance. So the community has a benefit there, and so does the individual to God. It says the Old Testament punishes for each level of premeditation, for each step in the wrong direction. So if you stole an animal, you had to plan, like if you stole a small animal, that takes less planning than stealing a big animal because it's harder to hide a big animal. So you clearly have to think about it. So you would get more trouble for stealing a big animal. Or if you stole something and then killed it, those are 2 crimes, not the one. And then, so if you get caught and you can't pay it back, no problem. You're their slave now. It's fine, no problem. You don't have, not for longer than 7 years or whatever, but there you go. It was taken care of. It was hoped that in those 6 years, he learned to know his intended victim, not as a fat cat who was responsible for his poverty, but as a caring employer who contributed to his spiritual rejuvenation. Slavery, though opposed in the Bible, she says slavery, though, is opposed in the Bible, and it works hard to limit it and demand that slaves be treated humanely. She said Judaism is a religion that teaches that every person is created in the image of God. It is a religion that teaches freedom from bondage as its central theme. I think Christianity is right up that vein also. God expects us to value our fellow as ourselves and not steal the divine gift of freedom. So apparently you can steal objects, but you can also steal someone's freedom. It's a big deal. Please don't steal that from me. She also did mention in this part, she went to a family life and how hard that can be sometimes, and how she said that keeping a child away from the other parent in a divorce is stealing. I tend to agree, of course, unless there's some sort of safety issue. So some rabbinic commentaries interpret this commandment as a prohibition against kidnapping, because there is another command in Leviticus prohibiting theft. So they thought, okay, well, that deals with theft. This must deal with kidnapping, I guess. And kidnapping was apparently super common in the ancient world. So that's something they had to deal with. And the punishment for kidnapping was death. All right. So then she switches to some excuses and rationalizations that to talk us through the rest of these ideas. She pulls up an excuse and then she kind of shoots it down, and then pulls up an excuse and shoots it down. And the first one was, I didn't know. She said, though the American judicial system has the burden of proof on its shoulders to prove that someone knowingly received stolen property before convicting, Jewish tradition places more of a burden on the purchaser. Even suspecting it is stolen should be enough to make you not do the deal. By buying something that you have reason to suppose is stolen, you further the cause of evil and ensure a repetition of the act. I mean, the first thing that pops into my head there is don't stand in the seat of sinners, don't walk in the way of the blah, blah, blahs. You know, like it's bad. Don't do that. Partly because it's bad for your soul, but also apparently maybe because it's bad for literally everyone. Because if we participate in creating an environment which that is allowed to go on or looked the other way, that's bad too. She quoted Deuteronomy 22:1, no finders keepers, to nix the no finders keepers thing. Let's find out. If you shall not see your brother's ox or his sheep go astray and withhold your help from them, you shall take them back to your brother. So they say, if you see something, say something. Deuteronomy 22, verse 1. And then she says, Exodus 23:4, she quotes that about returning lost objects. That's the other half of finders keepers, I guess. You are not allowed to just not get involved when you see injustice, and you're not allowed to benefit from it. Exodus 23:4. I think that's pretty much the same thing in a different spot. All right, so even to enemies, we are not permitted to distinguish between worthy and unworthy people. God causes his rain to fall on the righteous and the unrighteous. Jesus came to heal the sick, need a doctor, not the well. Those ones pop into my head with that. The next one was, I didn't steal it. It was their stupid mistake. Yeah, I was like, what? Apparently her examples were like when you go to the store and you get extra change back erroneously. You're not allowed to be like, whoa, you're an idiot, shouldn't have done that. You have to give it back. It's not yours. It's only fair considering all my past bad luck and problems, like this whole cosmic, the world owes you thing. I mean, again, God causes his rain to fall on the righteous and the unrighteous. That is clearly just not how it works. So that's a hurtful attitude. We shouldn't have that. I deserve it because I don't have it. Same kind of thing. She said, in truth, under despotic or corrupt regimes, where resources simply aren't available, stealing of food may become necessary when there aren't alternatives. That's what she said. We must be reminded that everyone's life is equally important. Stealing food, shelter, or medicines from others also in need is never acceptable. What do you think? Do you think sometimes stealing food is okay? Like under the certain circumstances, like if you were going to die, if your kids were going to starve? I mean, I would do it, hands down, no question, whether or not it were right. If my kids were going to starve, to be honest with you, I would think the injustice there is someone having enough to share and not having it and not sharing it, right? That's not good. So I guess all we should probably take away from that is the thoughts on what to do if we have plenty. I mean, right? I guess because we're not supposed to worry about it. God just closes the flowers in the field more than you. Why would you worry? He already knows what you need. So I think the only healthy thing to take away from that is what to do when you have plenty. And that is if someone else is starving next to you and might feel that they need to steal food, that's probably a problem. You should probably be sharing a little bit more than that. Okay. So it is better to teach a man to fish than give him a fish. It is good for all to work for what they get. So it is the biblical approach to give the poor an opportunity to supply their own needs and not just to give them what they want. She says, poverty does not create evil. The problems of the underclass are not caused by poverty. Some of them are exacerbated by poverty, but we know that they need not be caused by poverty, for poverty has been the condition of the vast majority of human communities since the dawn of history, and they have, for the most part, been communities of stable families, nurtured children, and low crime. I didn't take that one at face value. I thought history was pretty brutal and horrible and horrific. And we've done a pretty good job slowly mitigating some of that as a people. So I wasn't really sure about that one. I don't think poverty creates evil. I do think it exacerbates it. I agreed with that, but that's as far as I went there. Anyway, she says, ultimately, God teaches us that the haves and the have-nots have the same moral responsibility to the law. She quoted Leviticus 19:15. Let's see what that one says. Leviticus 19:15. Do not pervert justice. Do not show partiality to the poor or favoritism to the great, but judge your neighbors fairly. All right. It's not hurting anyone, was the next excuse she talked about. She said it's a favorite rationalization of those stealing from big business, but all of us pay higher prices because of those who think they aren't hurting anyone. It's bad for society. It's one of the things that she keeps saying throughout this whole thing is, well, the fabric of society is going to fall apart if nobody trusts each other, of community, and God seems to like community. That's kind of his idea, so he likes it pretty good. I was only borrowing it, not your choice. I deserve it. Again, not really. I haven't really taken anything. Lying to get the kids discount or the senior discount, as was her example for that one. She's like, that is stealing. You're stealing from a business. Michelle said that she worked hard to get that senior's discount. She earned it. Cheating on an exam. Huh?
Cheating with cable.
Yes, cheating with cable. That was her other example. Yeah.
Are you talking about sharing Netflix accounts?
And sharing Netflix accounts. Yes. Again. Yeah. Okay, she said, what about this one? I did it for a good reason, which I feel like we just talked about that with the food thing, right? I don't know. Well, she says this rationale does more than just make stealing acceptable. It elevates it to a higher purpose. We should probably be careful with that. The ends justify the means, unless it is the plans for biological warfare, illegal drugs, or a gun to be used in a murder, all things that are illegal or will result in innocent deaths. Stealing cannot be elevated to a higher purpose. So I guess she was saying if you're there and the plans for the biological warfare right there, you should steal those. You should probably take those. So she says. There's a little more gray area in this one than the other ones, it seems like. I was like, okay. I mean, I totally would. Again, I would do that. I'm not. Right, which is why it's considered a higher good. Yes. Okay, everyone else is doing it. Y'all are parents, you know this one. You've asked your kids, well, would you jump off the cliff too? She says, most childish of the excuses and thefts committed using this rationale usually involve people lying to themselves or everyone because it is a bad and embarrassing reason. That was mine. Because it is a bad and embarrassing reason was my addition to that note. The more frightening version of this, she says, of this excuse is gang and mob mentality. And that can be scary. I think I'm going to, it might be in the next one, the false testimony one, but she was saying somewhere, she says, we maybe will repeat it later, but somewhere she says that a quote from Hitler is that societies more easily believe big, gigantic lies than little ones. And my note in the margin next to that one was gender identity, sexual identity. Like that's a big lie. And because it's so big and bold, you almost don't feel like you have the authority to like shoot it down, I guess, is kind of the concept. So us truth tellers are pretty important in a society. Okay, so all's fair in love, war, and in business. Since commerce is the backbone of society, laws are needed that ensure trust between buyers and sellers. She says the Bible is concerned that buyers get a fair deal and sellers make a profit. The worker is worth his wages, right? On both ends there. It is possible to rob someone with words. She says, is it possible to rob someone with words? Sure. by intentionally giving a business competitor false information, or there's lots of ways to steal with words. I think you can steal someone's reputation with your words. You can steal lots of things with words. False and misleading advertising is another form of theft. Taking someone's valuable time, knowing you have no intention of doing business with them, she says, is stealing. She said, window shopping is fine, but you have to tell them, like, I'm comparing you with this other, she says, honesty. I'll pay when I can. When we engage someone in a written or verbal contract, we are obligated to pay that person as soon as he completes the job and submits a bill. Her example with this was family borrowings. If you borrow money from a family member, she said she's had countless callers calling her radio program who have loaned money, and now because they're related, they just feel like they don't have to pay it back. Like they were owed this assistance, and that's just not true. Once you become an employer, your first obligation is to pay those who work for you. I work here, I earn it. The exclose for taking office supplies or using work time not working. Unauthorized giving away of the services or products of an employer. Like, if your daughter works at the restaurant, she gives you free soda. That's technically stealing, I suppose, unless they've specifically told her, please feel free to do so. She said this also includes thoughtlessly stealing other people's time, like keeping people waiting and showing up late for appointments. It also includes robbing the mind or tricking people. None of whoever teaches the least of these to follow all the law will be called great in heaven, and whoever doesn't will be least. That's, to me, robbing the mind or tricking the mind is kind of that one popped into mind. It's not much. She said the quote from the listener was, I realize there is no sitting on the fence where honesty is concerned. Either you're honest or you're not. Just because some forms of stealing don't have a readily identifiable victim, such as copying computer software, it's still against the law, and therefore wrong for someone who professes to follow the teachings of the Bible, which embrace honesty. That one sounds a lot like carrying the Lord's name not in vain, too. All of these overlap so much. I like it. Okay. I couldn't help myself. It is all well and good to have a judgment-free atmosphere in a therapy session, she says, where the individual is comfortable to delve into interpretive associations in order to understand his or her motives and actions. But it does not work when these techniques and therapeutic concepts become the dominant atmosphere of a society so that accountability is eliminated. She wrote this in the 90s. I was like, whoa, sounds like what's going on today. How crazy. Yeah, I guess Lawrence said she could have written it in the 50s as well. I guess sin has been here for a while. So, and then she has a miscellaneous excuse category. She said, in this category, they put folks who justify stealing in one area by proclaiming their morality in all other areas. So like, I can steal X, Y, or Z because I'm so forthright in every other way, or I'm so dependable, or I'm fantastic. And that doesn't really follow. All right. She said, you can steal someone's ideas. You can steal someone's innocence. I have small children, so she talked a lot about what they see on TV. And I was like, oh man, yeah, you got to be real careful with that. She says that having children virtually from birth taken care of by strangers robs them of their early and necessary experience with living attentive parents and steals their innocence. You got to do that sometimes. Like I hear you, but also we don't live in a society that allows for that. So I didn't really like that one. But she says the bottom line, if you haven't bought it, earned it, been given it, or inherited it, it belongs to someone else, and that's where it should stay. And that means don't keep things that came your way by accident. Don't manipulate, excessively cajole, or exert pressure on people to make them feel guilty in order that they give up to you what you want of theirs. It seems pretty clear. And again, if in fact one of the ways we are made in God's image is that we are made to empty ourselves so that he can fill us, you can't take what's not yours. That's literally the opposite of that. It will not work. Okay. That was do not steal. Does anybody have any other scriptures that come to mind anytime Jesus talks about thinks about, lives out any of these concepts. I thought about when he emptied the temple, because they were telling the people that you had to purchase these things at these prices in order to reach God. While I guess at the time they did have to sacrifice. I don't know. It felt a little bit like stealing, maybe. I don't know. Maybe I didn't read it again because I don't have time, but I don't remember exactly what he says to see if there's that in there anywhere. I know in Ephesians it says everyone should stop stealing and work so that they have something to share, because I think we're made to pour ourselves out. I think that's what we're made to do. Okay. And again, like last week, I did not have time to put both chapters on paper notes. So one of them is book notes. Okay. This one is, you shall not bear false witness against your fellow. So she says, as a society, we have moved very far away from the age when a man's word was his bond, to a society in which people are more accepting than ever before of exaggerations, falsifications, fabrications, misstatements, misrepresentations, glossovers, quibs, concoctions, equivocations, shuffles, prevarications, trims, and truth-colored and varnished. That acceptance has surely changed the moral landscape of this nation, and everything from the disappearance of common social courtesies to the prevalence of vulgar and vicious radio and television programming, from disrespect for traditional sexual and marital mores to the ever-growing cynicism about the potential of goodness to survive anywhere. That sounds like all of the commandments are in danger. If lying is just okay. She says, why are we as a society so complacent with this reality? She says, probably because it lowers the standard against which we have to measure ourselves. Except for that it doesn't, because what measure are we supposed to measure with ourselves against? We know. I even told Coraline, look, I'm going to mess up sometimes, which is why you have Jesus as an example too. I am not right and wrong. He is right and wrong. And that's who we follow, no matter what's going on. She says, she gives a quote, or she talks about the George Washington myth about how he lied. Yeah, I chopped down the cherry tree. I cannot tell a lie. And she said, she makes the 50s sound like the good old days, Lawrence, but she says back then, honesty and greatness were a package deal. Can you think of any great political leaders or world leaders today with whom honesty comes as an assumption? I can't. Dave almost choked. All right. She says that lying is part of a larger trend celebrating individuality. If it serves me, it is good. Free speech stretched far away from freedom to criticize the government without fear to any expression, no matter how destructive. Entertainment. She says commentators in the media say it is the readers/listeners' responsibility to figure out the truth. Free enterprise, exaggerated claims of advertisers are defended as a necessary in a competitive market. Or she says the blessing of a free state where rights are valued over responsibilities, which is totally where we are. I don't know if we've been here since the 50s, but I feel like that's, as a society, that's where we are. Okay, so then she starts talking about, she quotes Psalm 12, 1-2. It says, help, O Lord, for the faithful are no more. The loyal have vanished from among men. Men speak lies to one another. Their speech is smooth. They talk with duplicity. So apparently this has been going on for a while. How can we have an expectation of abiding friendships, which I think we're supposed to have, honoring business relationships, fidelity in marriage, which I know we're supposed to have, and cohesion in families, also important, and in communities, this, when we can't trust one another? She said people are shacking up instead of marrying because they can't see that there's any difference in outcome between a covenant before God and an agreement. That's probably the church's fault overall, right? I mean, we're the ones, like not us specifically, but like Christian humans, us included, I suppose, but I mean, we're the ones that are supposed to teach the difference there. I think that's part of the PR problem with the church is for a while, we were good at the don't do's and not so good at the whys and the what comes and the what we offer. Freedom, joy, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So one of the main attributes of God is justice, and truth is a precondition of justice, meaning if the lies are about, how can you know what's actually going on to know actually what needs to be done, right? In some regards, she said, lying is more serious than stealing. The thief takes material things while the liar creates injustice and misery, though she did talk about you can steal someone's reputation, you can steal with words, you can steal innocence. So they overlap wildly. But she says the liar also kills himself spiritually by diminishing in himself the divine glow that raised him above the rest of the animal kingdom through acknowledging his creation as being for the benefit of his neighbor and God, which sounds like you're supposed to be pouring yourself out, right? And if you're not doing that, it's not going to work out. She said the ninth commandment specifically prohibits lying under oath in a court of law. So the language of this commandment is legal language. So the Jew reads it as specifically in a court of law. But I'm pretty sure, doesn't Jesus do, you've heard what I say about this? So we know, they believe also, but we know for sure it's not limited to court. Lie anywhere else you want, unless you're in court. Not what it means. Sorry. All right. Proverbs 19:5, the false witness will not go unpunished. No one who utters lies will go free. I mean, the sick need a doctor, right? And if we're the doctors, if he's the doctors, if we bring the doctor, we can't lie. We can't lie to them about what truth is, what's going on, what problems are, what solutions are. Life, we cannot lie. So it would seem that the momentary thrill of being on TV and the reward for a few $100s have become more sacred than honor, dignity, and truth. So a major impediment to a free society is dishonest judicial system. You're not allowed to accept bribes. Exodus 23:2-3, you will not be led into wrongdoing by the majority, nor when giving evidence in a lawsuit side with the majority to pervert the course of justice, nor will you show partiality to the poor. So there is no circumstance that makes it like, if a poor person does something wrong, they have to be held accountable to that too. And if, you can't just hate the big business, you can't just do that, right? Because that's bad for the individual person who, right? That's bad. Everybody has to be held accountable. Right. All right. She said, the Bible states that a punishment for perjury is, then shall you do unto him as he planned to do unto his brother. So very like if you stole and got caught, that was taken from you also. Well, whatever punishment would have been brought on whoever you lied about in court, that punishment is done to you. Yeesh. So she talks about you're not allowed to just not get involved and mind your business. I mind my own business, or I just didn't want to get involved. If a person will sin, if he accept a demand for an oath and he is a witness, either he was or he knows. If he does not testify, he shall bear his iniquity. That was weird sounding language for, she says, if you see something, you have to say something. If you see injustice being done, it is dishonest to just, not my business, I guess. She said, technically, this commandment deals with testimony in a court of law and the impact on the judicial system, but there are clearly vast implications of not telling the truth in our everyday lives. We mostly lie to cover up guilt, she says. I agree with that. Or avoid things you don't want to do, which usually you feel guilty about. So guilt's always involved. We mostly lie to, such lies are not permissible because they allow the individual to avoid responsibility and the possibility of healthy growth and change. One of the things I've learned is that God doesn't help me through things I don't take to him just because his help is consensual. That's how he insists it be. So if I lie to myself about my issues, or if I just like withhold from him the truth of how I see things, if I'm like, well, this sucks. You don't look attractive. You feel heavy and awful. If I don't actually tell him that, he doesn't help me. I'm not sure why that one made me think of it, but it does. Conscience doesn't always have the power to force truth telling. A citizen may decline. So she says so this is Justice William H. Rehnquist wrote this I guess into law. This was their, when they make a law, the Supreme Court, they write like a summary about it or whatever. And he wrote, a citizen may decline to answer the question or answer it honestly, but he cannot with impunity, knowingly and willfully answer with falsehood. So it's a little bit different than the Jewish version, because the Jewish version, if you know, was like, you can't just not get involved. But apparently in America, we're fine with that. We like our privacy and our rights to choose whether or not we get involved. Yeah, Cheryl said that's the difference between secular law and religious law. So she said sinning basically goes hand in hand with lying. Few sins are committed without the perpetrator taking some comfort from the expectation that if caught, he has the opportunity to lie himself out of it. Conversely, the more you become familiar and comfortable with a lie, the easier it becomes to lie and branch out into other wrongdoing. I think all sin is a gateway drug to other sin, so lying too. So a commitment to honesty does build reputation with your neighbor and with God, but it may take a while, but when it really counts, you will be the one believed. And then she spends a decent amount of time talking about, maybe not yet, she's going to start in a minute, spending a decent amount of time about how when we teach our kids about honesty, we have to teach them that you don't be honest to get a direct benefit, because that's just not how life works. And that would do them a disservice. So we can't do that. So lies can kill. On a more this is it. This is the Hitler quote. She said, he said, the broad mass of a nation will more easily fall victim to a big lie than to a small one. Scary when the bad guy is smart. Hate gains longevity through lies. We strive for truth. We strive for truth because it is a divine quality. A faithful God, never false, true and upright is he. Deuteronomy 32:4. I mean, there are bunches of scriptures of the Lord keeps his promises. It's kind of a big deal that he keeps his promises. I think that's why he spent time making so many and keeping them, so that we could know the ultimate promise, he keeps it, because he keeps all of them. Therefore, if we are going to carry his name around and we make a promise, we must keep it, right? And then she talks about when God's considering, okay, and then she talks about some times where lying seems to be accepted in the Bible, and or at least considered. So when God is considering messing up Sodom and Gomorrah, apparently he asks himself, shall I conceal from Abraham what I'm going to do? He doesn't, we know. He talks to him about it. The idea that God is a God of truth is reflected by Jews and Christians who respond in prayer with the word amen. This word may derive from the Hebrew word, I would say it, emunah, meaning faith, or as an acronym for El Melech Ne'emen, God is trustworthy king. So God is portrayed as being truthful. God's word is truth. I circled God's word is truth, and I wrote Jesus in the margin. This is demonstrated in a big way when God promises Abraham that the generations to come, when his people will be enslaved, God will set them free. Said, did they ever lie in the Bible? Is the rule against lying absolute, or are there times when we can legitimately lie? And she has two categories. She said, to protect a life or for the sake of peace. And then she talks about when Abraham and Sarah are on their way to Egypt, and Sarah is hot, and he doesn't want to get killed for his hot wife. So he says, hey, tell him you're my sister. That way they'll come to me with like, hey, your sister's hot. Not like, hey, your wife, I'm going to kill you. God doesn't seem to say anything about that. She did note that it was before the 10 Commandments. I don't know what that means, but there you go. She talks about when Jonathan lied to his father Saul so as to ascertain his real intentions toward his buddy David.
Do I look fat in that dress?
Yeah, right. Alicia said, do I look fat in that dress? Every husband knows the answer immediately and is not dumb enough to look first, right? So she says that from God's own lips, we learn that telling a lie to save a life is allowable because of the David Jonathan thing, I guess. That's what she said. And an even more dramatic biblical story emphasizes the need to lie to save a life when the midwives lie to Pharaoh about killing the babies. They say, well, we just don't get there in time. Those are some strong women. You've been working them pretty good. And I mean, they were brave and righteous, and their weapon against inhumane brutality was resistance and lying, she said. So Psalms 26, 4-5. I do not consort with scoundrels or mix with hypocrites. I detest the company of evil men and do not consort with the wicked. My note on the side there was, but I came to save the lost. The sick need a doctor. So is that a contradiction? No, I don't think so. I think there's a difference between those who know, those who are saved, and those who don't. And we need, yes, Miss Cheryl. He said, and he doesn't, she said, and he doesn't say he won't forgive the lie. Yes, very true. But I can understand why he would also hate it, because it just causes farther harm and pain to people he loved, those in his care and who've not chosen yet to be in his care. Loves all of them, right? So associating and socializing with people who are not prone to tell the truth only encourages us to engage in the same behavior. If you guys grew up in youth group, you know that it's easier to pull someone down than it is to pick somebody up. And you probably stood on a chair and physically tried if you were in youth group. So it's important that we have a good community. It is also true that our need to be included, valued, desired, and feel important might lead us to adopt or at least passively accept the wicked ways of others. It is also true that we pick our friends and groups based upon either healthy or unhealthy aspects of ourselves. I mean, you guys are teenagers, and I don't know about you, but I totally made bad choices because my friends were, and I wanted them to be my friends. I didn't want to miss out. I didn't want them to bond without me. I didn't want to be left out. I didn't. And those are legitimate, real needs. We need community. So I guess that means, what do we take from that as the believers is we need to be a good community for people so that they can find one that doesn't ask sin of them to be part of it, right? All right. So the truth is, it does not always pay to be honest. This is where she starts talking about the kids. Though it is good to give our young children benefits for telling the truth, they must also learn that most often there is a price to be paid. How do you teach a kid that? Any advice? I got a few. Our children must be taught that the reward for telling the truth is being able to look in the mirror and live with ourselves. They must learn that honesty endears us to others, helps maintain trust in society, and can inspire others to do the same. Children should not be taught that honesty is a tool to avoid responsibility, consequence, or punishment. I remember when I was a kid, if I did something wrong, I would get punished because my mom was a ninja and always busted me. I don't know how she did that. But if I confessed either before or immediately upon being spoken about it, I was never promised no punishment, but I was promised, like, I didn't get also punished for lying about it. You know, Justin's grinning. You guys, did it work that way at your house too? Yeah. So she says, it is our hope, her and Rabbi Vogels, that one day honesty can again play a role in a country that has become successful because good work was rewarded. And if that's one of the things that our country has become successful on, we should probably keep that around, if at all possible. All right, we're almost out of time. So the biblical language with regard to lying is that one should keep far away from lying. Exodus 23:7. One should keep far away from lying as far as possible, but there may be circumstances in which lying would avoid unnecessarily hurting the feelings of others. Now, this is when she talks about the "do I look fat in this dress" type of situations. So honesty means that everything you say must be true, not that everything that is true must be said. Those are different things. She said, were that the case, no eulogy could be given without upsetting the family. Okay, so another cool biblical example that I never caught on. Apparently, when God and Sarah, Abraham's wife, pre-baby, are talking about the fact that she's going to have a baby, apparently she says, now that I'm old and withered, am I to have enjoyment with my husband so old? But God doesn't say that. He said that she said, shall I in truth bear a child old as I am? He said, God changed it. I thought that was neat. I was like, oh, okay. Probably because he didn't want to hurt either Sarah or Abraham or their a very crucial relationship in order to build the child, you know. But I thought, I was like, I did not pick up on that. That is hilarious. So judgment and good common sense need be employed. All right, you guys, that's about all the time we have. Thank you for letting me teach class. It was a ton of fun. I really enjoyed it. If you have comments or questions, let me know. Otherwise, thanks.